All right. See if I did this all right this time. Okay. All right, so let's talk about this week and next week. They're both on the same content page. I reorganized the order of the files were in here this morning because students kept asking me questions that wanted to start it early, which is fine. I love it when you start things early. It means you have more time to work on them. But I figured out that nobody was actually reading the file that says in great big capital letters, read me first. Go figure. So I'm going to point out that you should read the read me first file. It's important. I wouldn't have put it there if it wasn't important. There are resources for this project. You will have to open that tab and download some files or your project is going to go miserably wrong for you. This is a rather lengthy project. To me, it is I don't want to say hardest, but I want to say most tedious, detail-oriented project of the three. So, the reason I gave us 2 full weeks in class to do it. I've got one set of lecture notes to go with it, where we're going to talk about how to deal with pictures and how they are stored in a computer. And we're going to talk a little bit more about colors and how they're generated. The whole project is about manipulating picture files. So, that being said, I'm going to do the lecture, and then we're going to come back and do the README files. The lecture notes include some slides that are review for the exam. I'm not going to do those, but they are there if you want to go look at the review slides as topics that'll be on the next exam. I'm opening the exam next week. So you have this week to work on the project without thinking about the exam. Next week, the exam will be open. You choose the day and take it as long as you take it before the due date. Right? I have been asked if I would put together a study guide for this exam. The best study guide for this exam is quiz 5 and 6, because every question on the exam came from the same question bank that quiz 5 and quiz 6 came out of, and are limited to only the questions that were on quiz 5 and quiz 6. So even if you made a good grade on the quiz the first time you took it, it might be an idea to go ahead and take it the second time, since I always take a higher grade anyway, just where you had an opportunity to see more of the questions, right? So I am going to work on it. I'm going to look through the exam and see if I can come up with some general topics. And if I do, I'll put it out there the next day or two. But that's, like I said, the best study guide would be going over those quiz questions again. And if I'm not mistaken, you should be able to see the quiz questions after you take them if you want to go back and look at them. If not, let me know. It means something's not set up correctly. All right. As for the slides, we're going to talk about processing images. So we're going to talk about, you had a question? Fine, just checking. So we are going to talk about images. This is the hard way to do Photoshop or any kind of filters and stuff that you would be doing on your phone. You're going to understand and appreciate those pre-built things a whole lot better by the time we're done. So an image is actually stored in a grid or a two-dimensional array, depending on which programming language you're in. So if you think about a picture that you took on your cell phone or any other place, and you know your phone says you have so many pixel resolution, right? That's how many little dots of color are in that picture. 12 megapixels means you have 12 million pixels per picture or per inch. I don't remember, per picture, I think. Anyway, the resolution, the more pixels, the sharper the image is, the more you can do with it. If it's a low resolution picture, you zoom in too much, it gets very grainy and blurry. But the more pixels you have, the further you can zoom in, the more editing you can do, the clearer the image is, just a higher quality product. So each little square is a pixel. Each pixel is so small that it's kind of like literally a dot on the screen. That dot has a red, a green, and a blue value associated with it. It also knows where it is located in the picture. So it knows its X and its Y location. Does that make sense? So I can go into a picture, if I know how to code it, and grab any individual pixel, do something to it, resave it, put it back, and have changed each singular dot. Right? So it's a 2D, this is in 2 dimensions. When you get into computer graphics, that's when you get into 3 dimensions. So we're going to work with 2D images. They're going to have an X and a Y. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they are. The X and the Y values are going to start at 0, 0 in the top left-hand corner. Right? So the very first pixel is in that top left-hand corner. They are, each one has an RGB value. So it has a red, a blue, and a green value. We did this a little bit with our triangles, changing the random colors. We're going to apply that some more. This image on my slides is a low resolution picture. See how blurry it is, it blew it up, and it got pixelated. Yeah. It's okay for what we're doing in here, but probably not what you want if you're paying for high quality images or sending them off to your mom because you want her to be proud of something you did. There is a red, green, and blue color chart. If this works, yeah. Maybe. Hey, the link actually works. And if you want to figure out colors, you can play with a little slider, and it tells you what the red, the green, and the blue values are at any particular location. So if you pick a location in this green colors, it gives you the RGBs, right? Also, it talks to you about the color codes for the standard colors, like white, blue, red, green, gray, yellow. Whole little chart of them. Remember, there's no such thing as purple, it's all magenta. So if you need a standard color, you can cover this chart and look up the red, green, blue value. If you want to make your own, you can go play with a little slider and pick a color and see the perfect color for you. This is going to be important because I'm going to walk you through doing some things with the standard color. And then I'm going to say, hey, now you figure out how to do it for magenta or yellow, right? So you'll need to come back to this to think your way through it. But it is definitely in the slides linked for you if you need it. So we're going to work with images in the textbook. This stuff, the examples are there. They may be mixed up because I am finding out the further along we go this semester, the more they have rearranged the textbook. So if all my links don't work correctly, please let me know. I'll try to find the right ones. Sorry, I didn't know they were going to do a major overhaul of the textbook during the semester. That's kind of annoying. Anyway, so if we were doing this code, this is an example, we are going to have to import some files. We're going to import image because we don't want to have to reinvent the wheel and create all the things that go with the image. We're going to create an image. Images know things about themselves. So once you create the image, it has a pre-built-in function that will get its width and will get its height. So you know how many pixels are in the picture because you can take the width times the height and get a total number of pixels. Do you remember area of a square? Maybe? I know it's 8 a.m. in the morning. It's a little early for math, but you can get a pixel at a set X and Y location. You can also get the red value, the green value, and the blue value out. Those functions already exist for you if you import image. Those are important functions.
That's what I'm thinking on this one.
Good. So what I'm telling you is that we are in this next project going to open up pictures and we are going to change colors. You can change some other stuff too, but the first thing we're going to do is learn how to change the colors of the pixels. Right? We also are going to learn how to negate the picture. And if you're old like me, you remember where you actually had to have pictures developed and you can have the negatives with them, and it's the opposite of the colors that are printing. Nowadays in digital photography, say that again, digital photography, negate is just something y'all do to see what things will look like with weird filters and stuff on them. So moving forward, we are going to do some code, right this second, but we are going to do some code. I want to get through these slides, the general overview, and then we're going to go into the README and then into the setup to get you guys started on your projects. If you did not bring a flash drive with you or your own computer, you may want to go back and listen to this when you go home and do it on your own computer, because it's a little, it's not really tricky, but it is steps you have to take for it to work correctly. If everything's not in the right folder together, you're going to get an error saying it can't find something, and you're going to be really frustrated. So to get through a grid, we have to do something called nested iteration. We're going to nest loops. We're going to have an outer loop that's going to handle the rows, and then an inner loop that handles the columns. Or you can flip them and have the outer one do the columns and the inner one do the rows. It doesn't matter, but you have to have two loops to be able to navigate across the grid. So an example of a nested iteration is that you would have for I in range 5, which means it's going to run 5 times. The outer loop's going to run 5 times, right? You're going to indent in and then have a second for loop. This one's going to be for J. Why are they different indexes? Anybody? All right, we have to have different variable names, I and J, because if we don't, they will confuse each other. If you did I for both of them, I would increase on the inner loop and then would skip steps on the outer loop. Does that make sense?
How would I skip steps?
So once it did 1, if I was, let's say I was 1, that's in the range. So it would come down here. If the second loop was also I, it would reset it to 0. Then it would do 1 through 3. Now I is 3, right? And then it's going to jump back up here, and it's 3 because it didn't reset because the loop didn't start over. So I skipped 2. Right? Does that make sense? Also, if I'm using I and J to print, if they're not the same, I'm going to print 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5. You're never going to see two different numbers because they'll be. Does that make sense? Kinda. It will make much more sense once you've done it once or twice or 15,000 times by the time we're out of here. Because pixels, 15,000 pixels, right?
Damn.
Yeah. So this one spells it out a little bit differently. So what if I don't know how many pixels are in my picture? I can't put a number for range, right? So in this one, I made the variables clearer because it just makes more sense to me, right? So if I come in here and I say, instead of I say for row, which I absolutely can do, which tells me that this loop's going to handle all my rows. For row in range of the height of the picture. The height of the picture will tell me how many rows I have. Right?
Yeah.
Then the second loop, the one that's nested inside of the first one, is going to be for columns. So I abbreviated columns with COL. Right? For columns in range of image.get width. Because the image knows how many pixels wide it is. So it can tell me how many columns I have. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, I see some nodding. Then I can set a variable up called pixel, where it's going to go into the image, get the pixel at column and row. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Now, you could have also done these as X and Y, if you want to think about them as X and Y coordinates. Rows would be Y, because they're going down the picture, right? And columns would be X, because they're going across.
Makes sense.
So here's another example. This code gives you the negative of an image. I see some shocked Pikachu faces going. It is a lot of code, or it looks like a lot of code, right? So let's walk through the code line by line. First, I'm going to import image. I'm going to create an image. In this case, it's luther.jpg. Just the names make more sense when you realize that all the files you're going to download are like Infinity War pictures and stuff like that. It's okay. So the first one obviously is importing all the things that we need. The second line creates our image to play with. The third line is creating a window to display our image in, like our turtle had to have a window to display in, right? And then the fourth line here is draw, and then the window name, right? So it's telling it to actually draw. Now, when you start doing your code, after you've made changes, you want to draw again towards the bottom, because if you don't, it won't automatically update the window. So you'll say, oh, I did all this code and it didn't change anything. Well, it may have, you just didn't update the window, so it didn't redraw it. You also can get it to redraw by minimizing the window and bringing the window back up. But just to be on the safe side, if you add draw to the bottom of your function, it'll automatically redraw it. So set delay, this makes it where it draws slow enough for you to see it. Otherwise, the computer's gonna just kind of flash it up there. So if you want to see it kind of draw in kind of an animated kind of way, put a number in there and it'll slow it. slow it down where you can see it. If you want it just to flash up there, just set it to 0. Does that make sense? Like with your turtles, when they were going too slow, I turned the speed up. This is turning the speed down where you can actually see it do something. I don't care either way. If you want it to flash up there, I don't care as long as the code works. Then we have our nested loops. We're going to do rows and columns. We're going to get the pixel out. And then we're going to create a new red value, a new green value, and a new blue value. So we're negating. Negating means we want the opposite of, right? And if you remember back from when we played with colors with our turtles, each color, RGB, has a set value between 0 and 255. That's the range the numbers can be, right? So the opposite of white is black. So you go from one extreme to the other. So if we take 255, which is the maximum of a color, and we subtract what the current color is from it, you get the opposite. Does that make sense? And if you don't understand the math on that, that's fine. Trust me, it works. So what we're going to do is take 255 and subtract the actual red that's in the picture, right? And put it into our new red. We're going to do the same for green and blue. And then when we get down, after we've done that, we're going to create a new pixel. That's going to be a image that's going to be a pixel that takes the new red, the new green, and the new blue. And the last thing we're going to do in our loop is set the pixel at row and column to our new pixel. Basically, we're going to go in and grab a dot. We're going to change some stuff about it, create a new dot, and put the new dot back in with the old dot. You say, well, why can't I do it on top in the old pixel? You probably could, but this way, for sure, you don't lose any information. Because it's really easy when you start going through to start changing the old pixel before you finish getting all of the information out of it. And once you overwrite it, it's gone. And then you have to reload the image and you have to start over, right? So after I've set the new pixel in there, I'm going to draw it. And then again, we have the when on exit, on click exit, which just means that if you're tired of waiting on it to do something, or you're stuck in an infinite loop, which is easy to happen in nested loops, you can click on the window, the pictures in, and it will close instead of just sitting. Or if you slowed it way down and you're tired of watching it draw, you can click on it and it will close.
Straight to the brain.
Now, before anybody gets really crazily annoyed with me and says, oh, that's a lot of stuff you just talked about and we haven't done any of it, I am going to help you write the first few functions after we get your files set up and your structure going. Right?
Yeah.
That's the reason I scheduled 2 weeks in class. This week, we're going to get you set up today. Next class period, if we don't get to it this class period, next class period, we absolutely will start writing some functions that you can include in your project. So have a little bit of your project done for you. Not a lot, just a little bit. And then we'll start answering questions and moving forward from there. All right. So inside and outside of the book, so there's a lot of stuff in the book. You can go look up images in the online textbook. It'll give you some more examples, give you some stuff you can read to help. There's some stuff that's not going to be in the book that we're going to talk about for the project. These are files I'm giving you to work with because we find them simpler than some of the stuff the book is doing. Does that make sense? All right, so inside the book, you have the image module. I also have the book, we're going to use C image. I'm going to give you some files. And then we're going to import C image. Ignore anywhere it says Moodle. All of the files are actually going to be in CourseDen. I just forgot to fix this slide. Sorry for the confusion, because there's at least one of you in here that tried to find it on Moodle and it was all my fault. Sorry. We're going to create a folder to put all this stuff in, because if it's not in the same folder, it will not find itself. So we're going to have a folder that's going to have all of the downloadable files that are in this week's content page. And it's also going to hold all the image files that we're going to be manipulating. You can absolutely use any school appropriate, let me say that again. You absolutely can use any school appropriate image you want to, if you don't like my example images.
Oh, man.
However, they do have to be saved in the correct format, and they have to be saved in that folder, or they won't find them. If you use an image and you specifically want it to be a certain image, it will not necessarily be graded with that image, because all you're going to give me is your Python file. I'm going to put it in my folder with my images. So don't do anything that is ultra specific to an image, because it won't, if it doesn't work on the images I'm testing it on, you're probably not going to get credit, or you're not going to get full credit, right? Just keep that in mind. Only GIF images work. They can't be JPEGs. They have to be GIF and formatted. Why? Because of the modules we're importing, that's what they work with. Are there other modules that handle JPEGs and stuff? Absolutely. But we're going with simple and not complex. Right?
So what exactly does it get?
It's the way the file's stored. GIF's very simple. It's actually storing every pixels. JPEGs, PNGs, things like that have some encryption and some compression involved into them. So they're not storing every pixel necessarily in those images. They're storing the directions on how to recreate them. And that doesn't help us when we're trying to manipulate them. If you really want to get into that, take some of the 3D or some of the video gaming classes and some of the graphic UI classes, and they'll talk more about those individual things. Even the web design classes probably talk more about how pictures are stored than I'm going to cover in here. Not all functions are available, i.e. set delay is not going to work in CImage. So it's just going to flash up there to the change. If you don't feel like it has redrawn itself, minimize and reopen the window the picture's in. I wish that it did work in CImage, but one of the drawbacks of using something we think is a little simpler than the book. Here is an example using the CImages. It just means that we're going to import CImage as an image. The image is a subset of the module of image. InfinityWar.gif is one of the ones that I'm going to give you. The professor who originally wrote this did it about the time the Infinity War movie came out, I'm guessing, because a lot of the sample pictures are Avenger
Is
themed.
it Thanos with like his like gauntlet out in the garden?
You can look and see.
That's like the best photo.
I think it's the movie poster photo, but I don't know. It's been a while. In this case, they're getting a new image where they created an empty one. So instead of copying over the image that was already there, you're going to actually have a blank canvas to copy onto, because you don't want to change your sample photos permanently, right? Then you can't get them back. Huh? Yeah. We're gonna do exactly the same thing, we just imported it differently. And created a blank canvas to put it on. Gonna do all this with you, I promise. Just a second. But I needed you to have a background for where we were going when I started doing the read meetings and stuff. All right. We are going to do some refactoring and stuff when we do these. I am going to jump out of the PowerPoint at this point. There are some more slides there, but I gave you a brief enough introduction. I think we can go and start doing some setup stuff. So if I jump out of the PowerPoint and head back over to the content page, there is this README file. It's not very long. It's like 2 or 3 sentences. Won't take you long to read it, but I'm going to read it to you. Project 2 requires several files to be downloaded and used to run this program successfully. The files are in the Resources tab. Download the files into a folder together. I suggest you create a new folder for this project and put all the files in it. I do it on the desktop because it just makes it easier for me to find. Or if you have a thumb drive, do it on your thumb drive. One file is a zip file of images. You will have to unzip this file. We're going to walk through it all. We will discuss all this in class, and I can provide assistance for anyone that is having trouble downloading a file. Now, if you wait till 2 days before this project's due to start, you will be so frustrated.
Where's the look at?
And you will be emailing me at all hours of the night, which I will not read because I will be in bed. And I will be trying to email you back the next day. If you email me on the weekends, I do my best. But if I have plans, I can't guarantee you what time it is I'm going to email you. I check my email at least once a day over the weekend. But if I have 25 of you emailing me on Saturday, it may take me a while to get back to you. Remember, I am a professor, but I also have a life. So remember, start this now. Do not wait till next week to start it. You have 2 weeks for a reason. If you miss a week, then you have a lot of catching up to do in the next week, unless you have a doctor's note, and then we will chat about an extension.
What if it's?
What if it's a what?
What if it's a drill?
If it's a mandatory drill, then you absolutely know you're going to get extensions. Don't ask questions you already know the answer.
I'll get the doctor. No.
I am legally required to give you an extension for that, and you know it. So here's the resources for project 2. Each one of them has to be downloaded. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to my desktop, and I'm going to right click. If you're in Mac, do whatever it is you do to a Mac. I don't know. I don't do Macs. And I'm going to cleverly name it Project 2. If you already have a folder on your desktop that's called Project 2, put CS1300 in front of it. And then whatever, I don't care. I'm not getting this folder. I will never see what you name it. You could name it Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo. I don't care. But you have a folder. It's named. I'm now going to go back over to here. It's in content, yes. Under this week. So 1024 to 1017 through 1024. Oh, I try to get a week ahead. I was trying to I was trying to take a week away from you. 1017 and 1024 are in the same content. If I click on these individually, They are automatically going to download into your downloads file, right? So I'm going to hit this little file folder right here and go to downloads, and I'm going to grab them all 4 of them, right? And I'm going to move them, right click, and I'm not going to move them. I'm just going to copy them. Let's just copy them, easier that way. I copied them. I'm going to the desktop, find my project 2 folder, right click, paste. Don't paste shortcuts, paste the files. You paste shortcuts, the files are still in the other folder. The shortcuts just give them a link back there, and that won't work for us. Now, once I'm in here, I'm going to double click and open the images one, and it has this pink box at the top. If you're on a PC, I have no idea what a Mac looks like. When you guys using a Mac, can talk me through how to do it on a Mac if you want to. Once I'm on that pink box, I'm going to click there, and I'm going to get this little icon that says extract all. Click it. And I'm going to change this destination folder just a little bit. Because if I don't, it's not going to be exactly where I want it. I'm going to take images off, because I don't want it to create a folder inside of my folder. I just want it to extract them into the folder I already have. So I just backspace the word images off. And then I'm going to hit extract. And when I do that, it automatically opens up where it extracted to. And now I have book test, see images, create negative image, the zip folder, and all of the images that I just extracted. There's some generic images, there's some Star Wars images, there's some Infinity War images. I didn't pick the images, I'm not opposed to the images, but I didn't pick them. If you decide you want to play with images of your own, make sure you put them in this folder. Honestly, I usually test everything using the moon or the barn because they're the shortest names, and I have to type the least amount. That, and every time I type infinity, it never looks right. I swear I'm misspelling it. All right. So, did everybody follow those steps and end up with a folder on their computer if you brought it with you? If not, the video will be on my YouTube channel. Also, in just a moment, I'll walk around and help you fix some of these things. Now, if you open these, individually, they have small pieces of code in them, right? So book test.py just is a testing function. See image, do not edit this file. Let me say that again. Do not edit see image.
Yep.
If you do, you will be re-downloading it and putting it back in this folder.
Yep.
If I was really evil, I would comment out something and maybe go find it in here, but I'm not. Don't mess with this folder, this file. Create negative image is just an example with the negative code already in there. A lot of students generally start with this file, they copy paste it into theirs, or they start working in one of the files that have already got something working in it. So if I take this one though, just to prove that it works, I can do run. And it negated the picture. And it did it really quickly. So the original picture looked like this. Boy, that's small. Let's see. The original picture looked something like this. The negated image, I clicked on and it went away. Of course, gonna be a day. Where did my Python file go? There it is. If I run it again, this is what that looks like if it's negated. All the colors have flipped. Does that make sense? I see some confused looks. I see some sleepy looks. The people that did not come to class today are absolutely going to be more confused if they don't go and look at the YouTube videos. It is amazing to me when I go and check my videos and see how many people have viewed them, that it is a significantly lower number than the people in my class. I have 40 students that are completely 100% virtual, and I don't even have 40 students watching my videos.
Damn.
Go figure. I must be really boring. That being said, any questions so far on the setup? Everybody who has created the file or the folder should be able to open with IL and run it and get this to happen. If you do not, let me know before you leave, and I will look at your folder setup and make sure that there's not anything wrong with it. Are we good? Now, like I said, there are different pictures here. You can add your own picture. I don't care. I probably, like I said, will be using the barn or the moon picture because they're short to type. So if we go back over to our content page, though, there were some other things in there that I wanted to talk about. So the Word document for the project is here. You can download it. You can leave it in the window. I don't care. This project, just like the project before, if you do part 1, you'll get a C. Now you have to do part 1 correctly to get the C.
That's what I get.
That is important. You should not move on to part 2 until you are fairly confident that part 1 is running correctly, right? Part 3 is the challenge section. It should absolutely be done last and should not be done unless part 1 and part 2 are running correctly, to the best of your knowledge. Because if part 1 doesn't work correctly, part 2 isn't going to. And the few points you get from getting that to partially work are not going to make up for the points you lost for part 1 not working. Does that make sense? Especially when part 1 is going to be 74 points worth of your project. You should spend 74% of your time on part 1. Part 2 and part 3 are going to be worth 14 and 12 points respectively. You are not required to listen to me. You are not required to complete part 2 or part 3 if you're happy with your 74.
What about the 0?
If you're happy with a 0, more power to you. One less I have to grade. You're adults. Make your best decisions. Notes about this project. You should not let someone copy your code. You are welcome, especially in part 1, to help each other in class, in lab, go to CSX, get help. You, however, should not have code that is word for word the same code with the same variable names and the same typos as your neighbor. I hate to say this, but I have had several instances this semester where it's quite obvious that one person did the code and another person copied it. I haven't had to take any disciplinary action because the person doing the copying is copying from somebody that's not very good at coding. If you're going to cheat, you ought to make sure you're cheating from somebody that knows what they're doing. Don't cheat. I will help you. Your classmates will help you. The CSX lab students will help you, especially on part one. They have unlimited ability to help you on part one. The only thing they can't do for you is write code. If they're writing code for you, I have a bigger issue to deal with there. But part two, you still can ask them for help. You can ask me for help. You can definitely ask Garrett for help, our lab PA, if he's here. They're not going to give you as much help. They're going to scale back a little bit because they're trying to make you independent coders on your own. So you won't get as much help. They're not going to sit there and tell you what to type. Part three, I'm going to ask that you only ask me and Garrett questions to begin with, because that's where I find out how much you can do on your own. And as you might have noticed, the last two assignments have been progressively getting less specific and more vague because I want to see how much code you can do yourself. Some people say they're getting harder. They absolutely are getting harder because we're doing more complex topics. But if you don't start independently coding now, when you get the CS1 1301, you're going to be in for a shock because the directions there are not nearly as detailed as my directions are. Because
So if they're not detailed, how do they grade it? Because like, if it runs, it runs.
if you think I grade very harshly, you have seen nothing.
If it runs, it runs. That's fine.
Myron has taken some other classes in the CS department. He'll tell you I'm probably one of the easiest graders.
You are.
I am willing to go into your code, even though I say I won't, and it doesn't run. If I can fix it with 1 or 2 lines of code, I fix it. Because I can't, it hurts my little heart to give you a 0 when you've actually coded something. So, just saying. More than once I have corrected things that had syntax errors in them and still giving you partial credit for them, even though the syllabus and the directions say 0s for that. All right, so part 1 is going to be all about you adding color washes. So you're going to add, create a wash of the image, and you're going to either create it where it has a red, blue, or green tone to it. It's not going to be subtle because we're dealing with very harsh colors here. It's going to be red. It's going to be very red. Does that make sense? It's going to be very blue. It's going to be very green. Then we're going to move from there into asking the user what file they want to use, doing some input strings, things like that. You might have to step out of the room to get signal. The Wi-Fi signal in here is horrible. If you don't believe me, ask some of the other students that have also had the same problem. The first part is really the easiest because all it's asking you to do is make those washes and set up the user interface where you know the user is going to tell you which picture to use and which thing they want to do, right?
Yeah.
The second part is gonna have you negate. Well, you're already gonna have negate because you have the whole file for it. Put negate in there somewhere and make it one of the options you can do later. The second part is gonna have you make it black and white. It's not a very clean black and white. It's very harsh. Doesn't smooth out edges and stuff, but it's gonna take the picture from color to black and white. You also are gonna modify your user interface where it knows what to do if the user doesn't use all lowercase letters, or all uppercase letters. We did some of this in the last one where you had to make sure that, like, yes or no, I want to play again. If they gave you something that was garbage, you made them keep giving you stuff that wasn't garbage. Similar concept, except if you know there's some known things like you want to handle capital red the same way you handle lowercase red, you can. It's just if statements, right? Part 2 is also going to ask you to add in the yellow, magenta, and cyan color washes, which is why you need to go back to that website that I linked to know what yellow, magenta, and cyan look like. Make sure that you are following the principles of good coding, you're not repeating yourself, and that you are refactoring code to be as simple as possible, right? I'm still seeing a lot of people putting code outside of functions. Your window and your image declarations should not be outside of a function. It should be inside of one of the functions. If nothing else, it should be in main, but it actually tells you where to put it if I'm not mistaken. If you use the examples, you should be able to see where to put it. Can't tell you how many times window and turtle were just randomly floating in the code. And then somebody created a turtle somewhere else. Also, one thing that I have seen more than once is more than one main function in a file. You should never have more than one main function. Your file should have one main. And it should have one line at the bottom that calls that main. You should not call main multiple times, and you should not have two functions called main or more. Part 3 is going to take it to another level, and it's actually going to pick 4 of the things that you create and put them together on one image. Honestly, it's the thing that most people decide that I'm not doing that. It just sounds too hard, and they don't even attempt it. But you have the resources to be able to make this work. You just need to make sure that the loop for each quadrant is set up correctly. And we'll talk more about that as we go through. But the starting and the end point for the loop is going to be different. Yes, sir.
So don't call me more than one.
Don't call main more than once.
With
Then it is incorrect.
when the was asking to ask if you have another picture that you want to like.
Then you can recall a function, but you should never recall main. So if you have a driver function, you absolutely can call that.
Right now, I have my main set up, have 2 options to it. If you type in quit, then it can't do anything, or it goes into the load and process. And then after the loading process finishes, then it cuts back to main to start the loop over again so that you can quit or.
That's not, will it work? Yes. Is it good programming? No. You probably should move all that into load and process and let main just call load and process. What you're doing by calling the function over again is called recursion, especially if you're calling it from within inside itself, and we haven't quite got there yet. Absolutely works, And if you can make it work, no problem, but I don't want you calling main again.
Okay.
There's a reason for that. Main is supposed to just start the program and get it moving. It's not really supposed to be used after that. Moving into the Java programming courses, main will actually sometimes be in a completely different file than the rest of your code. So that is the quick and dirty overview of your project. That is how you set up your files in a folder. I will come around for those of you that are in the room and help you if you didn't get your folder set up, or if you missed some of what I said when I was going through it, because I know sometimes I talk really fast. If you want to, you can always refer back to the video and you can email me. I strongly suggest that you go ahead and read through this and you start at least playing with the negates and the files that are in there to see how they're working. Even before you come to class in 2 days. When you get back in class, I will help you all write the color wash for red. And then you will go from there and make your own blue and green, which will be easy peasy once you've got the first one. I am not going to help you set up the user prompts
Oh, I was like.
because we have done that
Yeah.
now in several assignments. I'll check them for errors if they're not working and give you suggestions, but I'm not writing them for you. Training wheels are coming off.
Where's Luke at?
Questions so far? All right, so I'm gonna stop the video here and then come around and make sure everybody's folders are correct that want me to.